After going, oh, those crazy dancing kids,
Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
finally I did. And it's the voices that I hear over there and the things that they can't walk into their local quilt shop. And they're like, that's why I shop at, they'll say, that's why I shop at Joann's. I
Yeah.
know it's fabric, but they don't give me the side eye.
No, they're kind. Yeah, I get that. I
They
do get
or
that.
they don't care who I am. She says even if they don't make me feel unwelcome
Yeah,
there.
I get that. I really do.
And they'll say, I know it's craft fabric,
Yeah,
but that's what I can get, or I shop online,
yeah,
and there's a lot of voices over there. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, if one's gonna be totally blunt, I mean, I see this because I mean, my youngest daughter is trans,
yeah,
and and I see and I have learned and grown. So, I mean, I've always been somebody, I mean, as both my parents spin in their urns, somebody from the get-go who's been very liberal.
yeah,
And to their chagrin, I mean, they're like, where did we go wrong?
yeah,
Because, and I'm like, sorry guys, that's the way that rolled. But, I have learned so much from my daughter. I
yeah,
have learned so much about the community and about so many things
yeah,
from her that I might not have learned as quickly.
yeah,
Hopefully I would have learned, but you take
yeah. I
when
get it.
you have a trans kid, a gay kid, a non-binary kid,
Right,
or not who's
right.
on the spectrum or whatever, it's your baptism by fire
Yeah,
if you choose to be that parent. Now, of course, there's parents who don't choose to be that parent,
yeah,
but if you are that person and you bring that into your business sphere,
yeah,
and the honest to God truth is that I had the ability to do that because I knew whatever was ever going to happen is that my husband has been here to support us.
yeah,
And I think that there's a lot of fear there for a lot of people who own their small business and they don't have a spouse
yeah.
who's taking up the difference. And
Right.
so they stay very quiet
Yeah,
because losing, depending on where you live, you could lose 50 to 70% of your business.
yeah. So interesting. I think about that. I think this notion of like the world just changed. I think about like what I haven't really talked about this much, but it felt like frivolous for me. I mean, some people quilted like they that quilt like we talked to Jenny Lyon and like quilting saved her. Like she was just quilting and like doing stuff and that was super great. I
Mhm.
think for me, I felt like it was just too frivolous for me, like for my brain. Like I just wrote. I wrote so many. I mean, I wrote articles and books and books and books and like I just kept like feeling like I had to be doing something that was that like that's my safe space. Writing has always been my safe space, and it was interesting to feel like we all reacted so differently. And I think the idea that you shut it down, and it was not a safe space politically either. Like we're forgetting very quickly how volatile and how weird. I mean, we had like Nazis invade Just Want to Quilt at one point, right? Like it was just like it was brutal, and I can see why you would want to not have that space during that. You know what I mean? Like I can see
And it
that
was
happening.
because, I mean, in the best world, I would have wanted it to be a safe space. But honestly, with 30,000 people, there was no way because Facebook doesn't really want it to be a safe space.
Yeah,
Facebook, the way it's set up, they love controversy. Because
yeah,
that's clicks, that's churn, that's all those things.
yeah,
And so between people saying horrible things to other people
yeah,
online, and even if I had, a couple administrators helping me, we could not keep up with that.
yeah. It's
Um,
brutal,
and so
and
it
it's
was,
so toxic to you. It's so toxic to your day. It isn't like you
Mhm.
just deal with. At least for me, I just was like, why do I want to spend my time doing this? Right? Like it
Yeah,
gets Okay,
it
so
is.
you shut
And
it
yet I did
down.
it. And yet I did it again.
I know. This is what we got to get to the rest of the story. So you shut it down.
Yep.
You did other things. You like
Yep.
redoing your house. It's amazing, and you've got a lot of kitten. You deal with the sickest little kittens, and you're so. I mean, we did kitten rescue for a long time with my kid. We were not the first. We were not at your level, but there was a lot of sickness and death, and it was like a thing. You know what I mean? Like these kittens don't all make it,
No.
and so spending your time there on the sickest of the kittens
Mhm.
is pretty remarkable. That's got to be just a lot, you know?
And that was my cathartic place. That was where I could definitely give back and do because kittens didn't stop because of COVID.
Right.
In fact, I suspect that we found more people found kittens because they weren't at work. They were
Interesting.
different things because we would have them found out on hiking trails. We would have, I mean, because people were out,
Right.
because the only thing you could theoretically do, I mean, now, mind you, I live in the South, so people, they still win every place. I
Yeah.
mean, but a lot of people were still out. So we had,
Yeah.
just hundreds of kittens, and I do neonatals. And so that was my cathartic place. So I really dived into that, doing a lot of that. And then just, did, like I said, just like you said, stuff around the house
Yeah.
and kept busy. And then of course within there, my husband had his accident and broke his whole pelvis, shattered his whole
Oh, I
pelvis.
didn't know about this part. That's
Yeah, no, that was a big one. He shattered his whole pelvis and
ugh.
then broke his hip. And so that was really a year of our
Yeah,
life,
that's a lot. That's really a lot.
putting him back together, putting Humpty
Yeah,
Dumpty
that's
back
really a
together
lot.
again.
So
So,
much.
yeah. And once he was better, I kind of started, just kind of noodling around the idea because there just wasn't anything out there on the landscape that had popped up in the quilt world.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. I mean, that's what's so interesting about it, right? It's so fascinating. So you have rebooted.
Yes.
I have seen that I feel like we rebooted too. We forgot to post into 2022, which tells you kind of just that's weird. Just like, I'm like, what? Really? So tell me about the reboot, because we see rebooting happening. Isn't it Modern Society has rebooted their podcast? We are kind of rebooting. Tell us about the reboot of Badass Quilters.
It's basically a true doubling down, but it's a doubling down in a different way because honestly, it's an incredibly hard place now, like on Facebook, to grow a community.
Yeah.
That part is so different.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is, right?
absolutely different, very, very difficult. And I don't even really think, although we have a Facebook page, like Facebook would not allow me to register Badass Quilter
That
Society
was
anymore.
just so funny, right?
So
That
now it
was
has like
just so
it
odd.
has funky underscores in it, and running the words together in a weird
Yeah.
way makes it very hard to find that way. But they just absolutely wouldn't let me. I had some old dead pages, but they won't let me reactivate them.
That's so
Um,
interesting.
and they said because it was, offensive language.
Yeah.
I appealed and appealed and it didn't work. And then finally I basically snookered them by putting some letters together in a weird way.
Yeah, you just put dashes and they were
Yep.
fine with
I
it.
put dashes and it makes it think it's a whole word.
It's so weird.
Because it's not quite that,
Yeah, so
smart.
I feel like the nature of the world has changed dramatically with podcasting and Facebook. Like, you could build a community pretty easily when we started in 2018. By 2022, 2023, the world is just it's much more saturated. It's just different. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because like places that were definitely growing, oddly enough, TikTok, we're growing faster there. I
Yeah.
mean, not super fast. And then on Instagram, but it's nothing like it was before. And, while it would be easy because you watch some people grow, like just astronomical numbers by, dancing with their parrot or
Right.
whatever, and, but I'm just kind of taking it as it's really bringing in the people who really need it and who really want it.
Yeah, the irony is that you closed it because it got so big and that it was unwieldy. So maybe
Yeah.
being more, having more thoughtful people there is a good thing. But I don't know. It's interesting.
It is.
And the metrics have changed, interestingly, too. We see some weird stuff going on behind the scenes of what counts and what doesn't count, which is super fascinating to me, especially with the podcast numbers. I'm surprised by what we're seeing. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But there's new metrics I think they're doing. And I think they're doing that because advertising dollars encourage the podcasters, the platforms, to not be so like, you had so many people listen, because then they have to pay you. And so I find it's interesting that the metrics have shifted a bit,
Yeah, there is. I mean, and so that part's like a totally different landscape. Every bit of software that I'd used before has updated or changed.
Yeah.
So there's also this thing, and and I don't think of myself as old by any means. I'm just 55.
Yeah.
But diving back in and learning all the different changes and all the different softwares.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, do I want to do this?
Right. It's
And
a lot of work. It's
It's
totally a lot of work.
because it's daunting. But I also, the flip of that is I see every day somebody says, "Oh my God, I did not know that there was a group out there that spoke to me."
Yeah,
Quilting by myself
I like
forever.
that. Yeah.
So
Now,
that gives me
tell
hope.
me about how you used to monetize Badass Quilters and how you're doing it now. How has that shifted?
Well, there was a certain amount, of course, Badass Quilter Society, absolutely started when I had a contract with a company. And then they went in and they went through my blog and they're like, you have to take all these posts down. You can't curse anymore. You can't do this. You can't
Yeah.
anything. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And so they were like, well, I had already signed my contract with them and they pulled up, they said, well, we have a moralities clause in this if you look. And so we're going to cancel your contract.
Wow.
And it was like, I was like, fine.
Right. And did you like, right. Didn't you do any homework?
Yeah, well, I know. Well, that's why I was like, have you met me? This is my
Right.
husband always says, have you met her?
Right.
I mean, because they're like, you have to take all your posts about sexuality down. You have to do all these things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you put me on the side of your building.
Right.
My face is 20 feet tall on the side of your building. Did you guys not bother reading?
Yeah.
I mean, and so, but in the end, that was okay. I mean, it was what it was. And that's really how, birthed Badass Quilter Society.
Yeah.
And we've monetized different ways over different periods of time by having community, by selling merchandise.
Yeah.
Over, time, the truth of the matter is that, partnerships really in the quilt world don't pay
No,
any.
they don't.
For the amount of what they want. They're like, we want 14 blog posts and then, we'll hand you some tissue. I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, that was such a shock to me about how the structure of the industry was, that you can get piecework, like, you can make a pattern for someone or write an article or something like that. But that's paying, $200, $400, maybe $500. But it's not really sustainable on that level. And free merchandise is fine, but there's a moment when you're like, enough free merchant, like, I don't need this, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it's glorious, it's exciting at first, but at some point you're like, I have to get rid of more stuff, right? Like, more stuff showed up. So I don't know, it's interesting because we're like 5-6 years in now, and it's an interesting space to be in. Again, not trying to be, sounds kind of arrogant. I'm not really saying that. I think it's just what you're saying is like, it's like being a musician. You're not going to make money off of this song, but you will make money off of the t-shirt you're selling and other things. So it's the secondary markets that matter more than the sort of primary thing that you do.
Yeah. I mean, we had a private community for about a year but just keeping all of those cogs, all those plates spinning.
Yeah.
And to keep it at an affordable rate and to be able to use big fancy software for it and all that. So things just got like really, really heavy. And and in the end, yes, it could self-sustain, but again, it wasn't paying me. Like when I broke down how many hours a day I was working.
Yeah. Again,
I could be doing something else, or quite frankly, I could just be, a kept woman.
Right.
I mean, exactly. I could be, quilting on my long arm and enjoying myself and doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just and donating to big causes or doing something else. So I mean, in the kind of the reincarnation, I mean, I know that it's not going to be, generally speaking, it's not going to be companies. I mean, I can do affiliate marketing and stuff like that for different products because it doesn't tie the name too much, because if they have an affiliate marketing program, technically, whoops, where did you go?
Hold on a sec. Hold on 1 second. It was husband. Ron came home. It's so nice. It's so funny when people leave and come back. It's so nice to see them. Okay, so I interrupted you. I'm sorry about that. I thought it was the dogs. But
no worries.
A human. Humans are better than like weird noises that dogs are making.
Oh, well, believe me, I've got 4 of them back behind me right now who are wandering around my office, so I totally get that.
Yeah. You're like, if that's a dog, there's something really bad going on,
Yeah, no. Ours have a very different tone. There's like the squirrel tone versus the tone somebody's trying to get in the house. It's a totally different bark. And
I was like, what is going on? But it just turned out Ron's home. Okay.
Good deal. Excellent.
So monetizing. How did so subscriptions are saturated now too, but you were
They
really
are.
early on that.
Mhm.
How was that, and was that enough to make it? You said it wasn't enough to make it worth it. That's what